Bricks and Minifigs admitted something huge and no one noticed. And no, I'm not talking about the financials that we shared in our previous video. Today we're gonna go completely through all of the documents, and as we do it, I'm gonna be here having my morning coffee, which today I'm extra excited about. Let me know what you guys are drinking as we dive into this video. Thank you so much for subscribing. Now let's dive in.
Bricks and Minifigs released their 2026 franchise disclosure document on April 8th of 2026. So these are government mandated documents the FTC requires every franchise company in America to publish annually. So they had no choice but to put everything in here, and what they admitted is genuinely alarming. So today we're going through every single thing they revealed using their own words, their own numbers, and their own admissions. So all links are in the description. You can verify everything I am saying. But without further ado, let's get right into this. First, if you don't know what a franchise disclosure document is, here's a quick explanation. So basically, the FTC requires every franchise company in America to give potential franchisees this document at least 14 days before they sign anything or pay anything.
And the reason for this is if you're someone that's considering going into a franchise, that's a big financial decision. That's a big business decision for you. And you need all of the information laid out on the table in front of you before you make that final decision, financials and more. And that's why this franchise disclosure agreement is essential and has to be a part of any of these agreements.
It contains 23 items covering everything. The company's financial health, legal history, fees, trademarks, and what happens when you try to leave. And the key detail here is that no government agency has verified the information inside of this document, but the government does require them to disclose specific risks. And Bricks Minifigs 2026 FDD was issued April 8th of 2026, which was basically like a month before this entire scandal began exploding. And it contains 5 government mandated risk warnings right at the front. So these are 5 things that the government said were serious enough that Bricks Minifigs had to highlight them before anyone signs.
And as you saw from that document just a moment ago, that was something new for 2026, having to put together these 5 highlighted risks, or at least I believe it was, or maybe it was an issue
on the dotted line. So let's go through all 5. So the first risk warning is out-of-state dispute resolution. If you have any dispute with Bricks and Minifigs, any disagreement, any issue, you can only resolve it through mediation, arbitration, or litigation in Utah.
Wow, that's actually huge. The reason why this is huge, if they're requiring that you have to fight this in Utah, well, we already know that the authorities, that the court system, and that Bricks and Minifigs are all part of the same religious club. Basically, they're looking out for each other, and Bricks and Minifigs will have the advantage no matter what the case, if it's being fought in Utah.
So if you're a franchise owner in Florida, California, Texas, New York, doesn't matter, you have to travel to Utah to fight them. And Bricks and Minifigs' own FDD says that this may force you to accept a less favorable settlement and may cost more to mediate, arbitrate, or litigate with the franchisor in Utah than in your own state. So they're literally telling you up front, yeah, we know the game is rigged, but we're forcing you to play it if you sign this document. So that alone is insane, but we have 4 more risks to get through. The second risk warning are mandatory minimum payments, saying that franchisees must pay royalties and advertising fees regardless of their sales. It states clearly, your inability to make the payments may result in termination of your franchise and loss of your investment. So they have to pay 6% of monthly gross revenue or $500 minimum per month, whichever is greater, every single month for the entire term of your agreement, regardless of your sales. And
that seems a little bit less crazy. I think that's more of a standard type thing. Maybe here it's because whether you're profitable or not, you still have to pay for that advertising. But this seems something that's a little bit more, at least so far, normal with what I've seen for franchisees.
If you miss payments, Bricks and Minifigs can terminate you, and the asset seizure mechanism in the contract kicks in immediately. And that's what we've seen with multiple different franchisees during this whole debacle, this scandal. And the fact that this risk is government mandated, in my opinion, really shows just how much Bricks and Minifigs probably actually enforces this and utilizes it, because the government is literally saying they have to flag this early on in the document.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking. This is flagged, but I think it's something more normal. But if Bricks and Minifigs is regularly actually doing this, seizing stores, seizing the assets because people aren't paying that monthly fee of at least $500, then it would have to be flagged because it's something that's actively being used. While if that were in franchisee agreements with other franchises, name whatever one you want, it's often in there for reasons like if it gets really bad, they could do that type of a thing, but it's not taken advantage of the way that Bricks and Minifigs has clearly been taking advantage of their franchisees over the past few years.
Anyway, moving on to risk warning number 3, which was actually covered in the 2025 FDD that I went over a few days ago. It says, quote, the franchisor's financial condition, as reflected in its financial statements, calls into question the franchisor's financial ability to provide services and support you.
Wow.
And this is the 3rd consecutive year that this warning has appeared.
This is huge because it's saying that the franchisor can't do much for you. That includes advertising that you're paying the advertising fees for. Remember, they spent it was something like $800,000, don't quote that number, on advertising fees were paid to Bricks and Minifigs, while only $400,000 were spent on advertising, meaning $400,000 of that advertising spend that was paid was just put in the pockets. It means you're buying into a franchise that can offer you nothing besides maybe some guidance on how to set up your store and the name.
2024, 2025, and now 2026. The government telling Bricks and Minifigs they have to disclose that their finances are a mess, and franchisees should not expect Bricks and Minifigs to support them 100% because their finances are shaky.
Okay, so the 2026 5 things that we saw that I said maybe new for 2026, it's not. It was just stating that in 2026, those are the risks that you need to share in the document. You can't share risks that were potentially issues in 2025. They need to be updated for 2026.
And I'd understand if this was maybe for a year or 2 years. I mean, companies face financial trouble. That's a normal thing.
Of course.
But 3 consecutive years, at that point, it's starting to seem really odd to me, maybe even a little fishy. And when you pay a company like Bricks and Minifigs $13.2 million in fees and royalties, as what was paid by franchisees total in 2025, part of what you're paying for is their ability to support your store. And the government itself is flagging that ability as questionable. So I'll come back to exactly what the finances look like in a moment, but risk warning number 4, this is unopened franchises. So the document says, quote, the franchisor has signed a significant number of franchise agreements with franchisees who have not yet opened their outlets. If other franchisees are experiencing delays in opening their outlets, you also may experience delays in opening your own outlet.
It also says 70 people have signed franchise agreements and paid non-refundable fees, and their stores have not opened. Wow, that is another big flag. Also, 70 people equals $40,000 that are non-refundable initial fees, which is $2.8 million collected by Bricks and Minifigs, and the store hasn't even been opened yet. And this is a company that's got $2.8 million in their pockets for stores that didn't even open just to sign the agreement that's in financial distress.
This risk disclosure did not exist in the 2024 or 2025 FTD. Bricks and Minifigs added it for the first time in 2026. And why do they have to add it? Because as of December 31st, 2025, 70 people have signed franchise agreements and paid non-refundable fees, and their stores have not opened yet. 70 people times $40,000, which is the non-refundable initial franchise fee, that's almost $3 million collected for stores that don't even exist yet. So if Bricks and Minifigs' financial condition deteriorates further, which it definitely is getting a lot worse throughout this whole scandal, that's 70 people that may just be left with no location because Bricks Minifigs can't even afford to open new locations anymore or help support the franchisees. And that
not even that. with everything going on right now, you have 70 people, nearly $3 million of investment that's non-refundable, that were interested in opening a Bricks and Minifig store, that are now, with all of this scandal going on, maybe saying to themselves, this may be a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't do this. That's going to be $3 million or just under $3 million in Bricks and Minifig's pockets of people that just back out of the agreement because they don't want to spend any more money in a dying company.
It's $40,000 per person. That's a non-refundable fee. But perhaps the biggest one to me is risk warning number 5, which is unregistered trademark. The document says that the primary trademark that you will use in your business is not federally registered. If the franchisor's right to use this trademark in your area is challenged, you may have to identify your business and its products or services with a name that differs from that used by other franchisees or the franchisor.
All right, so what that states to me is, if there's a chance that in my area, I'm on the East Coast, I open up a Bricks and Minifigs and it gets challenged and I have to change the name to, whatever else, a name that I make up. Why even need the franchise in the first place? If it won't support you because it can't, if you're paying fees to it that it's not utilizing towards your support, and if the name can potentially be challenged and taken from you, what is the franchise actually offering you in the first place? Absolutely nothing but expenses. So why not just open up a, mom and pop Lego shop on the corner? That rhymed.
This change can be expensive and may reduce brand recognition of the products or services you offer. That is exactly what the document says right there. And this is also another brand new development to the 2026 FDD. So we'll talk more about this later because to me, this is absolutely insane. But moving on, we have what I like to call the $13.2 million question. So like I said earlier, in 2025, Bricks and Minifigs collected $13.2 million directly from franchise owners. So that includes 6% of monthly gross revenue in royalties from each store, the brand fund, which is 1% of monthly revenue from every store, the technology fees, which is $200 per month per store for the point of sale software, the initial franchise fees from new stores opening, the transfer fees when stores change hands, which is $30,000 per transfer, as well as product sales Bricks and Minifigs makes directly to franchisees, which was $1.3 million in 2025 alone, and of course, late payment penalties, audit fees, training fees, renewal fees, all stacked on top of that.
So this leads me to believe, why even open up a franchise? If these fees are so steep like we're seeing right here, it seems much smarter, specific, depending on your location, of course, to just open up a store that is not within a franchise. Literally build a Bricks and Minifigs, do the same thing that they do, take their model, study it, but change the name and avoid all of these fees. Before all of this, me not being a Lego person, mind you, before all of this, I never knew what Bricks and Minifigs was. If a Lego shop that was named whatever opened up in my town, it would have been no different for me if it were a Bricks and Minifigs or if it were just a regular run-of-the-mill Lego shop.
That's $13.2 million directly from franchisees. But here's the important question. What did those franchise owners actually get for $13.2 million?
Problems.
When you pay into a franchise system, you're paying for specific things, right? You're paying for brand support, advertising, corporate stability, a protected trademark, an infrastructure for growth. That is the value exchange, if you like to call it that. So let's look at what Bricks and Minifigs' own documents show franchisees actually receive.
I believe that you get none of those things. Literally everything that he just listed, I believe that none of them are actually being offered from Bricks and Minifigs, which again just supports my point of why buy into this franchise.
First of all, Bricks and Minifigs' primary trademark, Bricks and Minifigs, is on the supplemental register, not the principal register. So basically, for anyone like myself who has no idea what that means, it's like a less ironclad, less serious trademark if it's on the supplemental register and it's not on the principal register. The principal register is like the much more serious one. The supplemental one is like not really serious at all. It's like, somewhat lackluster. And their own FDD admits that registration on the supplemental register provides more limited legal protections than registration on the principal register. So that means if the trademark is challenged, franchisees may be forced to rebrand at their own expense. And critically, in the FDD, it says Bricks Minifigs is not obligated by the franchise agreement to protect any rights granted to you to use the marks. So franchisees are paying into a system built on a brand with limited protection, and Bricks Minifigs isn't even contractually required to defend it for them.
And I feel like, okay, that's a huge risk. You're getting people that are mega fans, super fans, big Lego people that really have the dream of opening up this Lego shop. So some of them, 70 people, almost $3 million worth of registrations on $40,000 fees worth of people are trying to follow that dream of their passion, and they're overlooking a lot of the risks that are part of opening up a Bricks and Minifigs.
Next up, we have advertising. Franchisees collectively paid $815,000 into Bricks and Minifigs brand fund in 2025.
All right, so my 800,000 number that I mentioned earlier that I was unsure of was actually on point.
And of that, $7,000 went to administrative expenses, $227,000 went to production, and $531,000 went to actual media placement. So that means that less than 70 cents of every dollar paid into the advertising fund went to actually reaching customers, and the rest went into production and admin overhead. So you pay for advertising, but then you get less advertising than you paid for. And mind you, this is required in your franchising agreement that you pay Bricks Minifigs for advertising. This isn't like a choice you can make. Next up, we of course have the financial stability. Like I said earlier, the government flagged Bricks and Minifigs' financial condition as questionable for the third year in a row. We've had negative net income, negative stockholders' equity, and liabilities exceeding assets year after year. But how much corporate support are these franchisees getting? Well, of that $13.2 million collected from franchisees, 42 to 59% of all Bricks and Minifigs revenue went to corporate compensation, which is like executive salaries. So paying our boy Ammon for all of his hard work as a CEO. $832,000 went to professional fees, which would be mostly lawyers. So they spent more on lawyers than on advertising for their entire franchise network.
What the heck, minus this case, are they needing all of these lawyers for? $800,000 in a year for lawyers' fees. They must have hired the best lawyers around.
So here's the bottom line on that $13.2 million from 2025. It's not like it was outright stolen or fraudulently taken. It was paid willingly by franchise owners who signed agreements. But the value they were paying for, brand protection, advertising support, financial stability, and corporate backing, Bricks and Minifigs' own documents show there are significant gaps and problems with all of those, and they can't necessarily completely fulfill all of those. So $13.2 million spent on this by franchisees in 2025. That money is gone. And what did the franchisees get for it in return? Well, it's documented right here in these pages, probably not the best value. But let's dive more into the trademark, because I think that's the most explosive detail here in these documents. So as I said earlier, as of 2026, Bricks and Minifigs' primary trademark, Bricks and Minifigs, like the name itself, exists on the supplemental register. And as I mentioned earlier, the supplemental register is a lot weaker than the principal register. A principal register has full federal trademark protection, a legal presumption of ownership nationwide, the ability to use the registered trademark symbol, the ability to block imports of infringing goods, and a strong basis for international registration. Whereas the supplemental register has weaker protection, no legal presumption of ownership, it's harder to enforce, and they can only use the registered trademark symbol because they're on the supplemental register, but it doesn't have the same legal weight as it would if they were on the principal register. And they've been applying for the principal register status since July 2023, but it still hasn't been granted over 2.5 years later.
I have to say, even with this, which I think is a big deal because you're paying for a brand that could be stripped from you, again, you may disagree, and if you disagree, please let me know, because I know a lot of people following this case are big into Lego and the whole minifig thing. I'm not, right? I'm into the case more than I'm an avid collector of Lego. Bricks and Minifigs is not a name that holds a lot of water where I said, man, I need to go and get my Lego from Bricks and Minifigs shop. To me, it wouldn't matter whatsoever. But again, I could be very much in the minority based off of all of us watching here, the community. So let me know if in your area, if you hear Bricks and Minifigs and used to think authenticity, this is where I need to go and get my Lego.
And the critical admission in the FDD was when they said, we are not obligated by the franchise agreement to protect any rights granted to you to use the marks or participate in your defense. So in plain English, that's basically saying if someone challenges your right to use Bricks and Minifigs in your area, Bricks and Minifigs Corporate doesn't have to help you fight it. And if the franchisee loses some dispute in their area, they may just be required to change to an alternative trademark, which can get expensive, and Bricks and Minifigs Corporate doesn't have to cover any of that. So that's every sign on every store, that's every piece of marketing, that's every customer who knows the name gone at the franchise owner's own expense. And again, that risk was significant enough that the government required Bricks and Minifigs to highlight it as one of 5 special risks in the 2026 FDD for the first time. And while we're talking about the value that franchisees are getting from Bricks and Minifigs for being franchisees, we have to discuss the increased costs of even becoming a franchisee. Yeah. So let's look at how much it costs to open a Bricks and Minifigs franchise and how that has changed.
I think it went from being $35,000 a year ago to $40,000 this year.
In 2023, the total investment for opening a Bricks and Minifigs franchise was $99,000 to $225,000. The initial franchise fee was $15,000, and the transfer fee was also $15,000. But moving forward to 2025, the total investment was $241,000 to $570,000. That is like crazy. Doubling since 2023. The initial franchise fee was $35,000, yep, and the transfer fee was still $15,000. But now in 2026, the total investment is as high as $300,000 to almost $600,000. And the initial franchise fee has been bumped up to $40,000, yeah, and the transfer fee is $30,000, doubled from 2025. So since 2023, the total investment for opening a Bricks and Minifigs store for being a franchisee has tripled. And the transfer fee doubling is pretty significant because it makes it a lot more expensive for struggling franchisees to exit the business by selling their store to someone else. And once you combine these costs with the mandatory minimum payment requirement and the asset seizure mechanism, the cost of leaving keeps going up while the financial condition of the franchisor keeps deteriorating. So franchisees are paying more to get into the business, they're paying more to get out of the business, and the company collecting all those fees is underwater itself. But the next thing I'm gonna go over is just, it just gets insane.
And another thing is, the fees are going up. The cost of everything to sustain is going up, and what they're receiving, the services being received, are less stable and are quite honestly pretty non-existent for franchisees.
Bricks and Minifigs competes with its own franchisees. This detail, it's buried in the document, but it's genuinely alarming to me. Bricks and Minifigs explicitly reserves the right to sell products online to customers anywhere. That is including any territories where Bricks and Minifigs franchisees are based, and they don't have to pay any compensation to the franchisee. So the direct quote from the FDD is, "We are not responsible for paying any compensation to you concerning the sale of our products or services by use over the internet." And they can also compete through national accounts. So like signing agreements with businesses that have multiple locations and servicing those accounts themselves inside of a franchisee's territory without compensating them.
That should not be the case. I understand being able to sell things online, right? That makes sense. But to be able to go into a franchisee's zone and directly compete with them is completely asinine. It makes no sense whatsoever. And I actually have a friend opening up a store right now. It is not a Bricks and Minifigs, by the way. It's not a Lego store. And the hoops he had to jump through to open up that shop in that location, he had to do all the research, make sure that there was no competing ones around, he wasn't infringing on other territories, that there was enough business in that territory itself to be a sustainable business for the head of that, the top of that company, that franchise, to come in and say, oh, we can still sell in your area, in your zone. Just wouldn't happen because it makes absolutely no sense, and it weakens the franchise itself.
So you pay $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for a territory, and Bricks Minifigs can sell into that territory through any online channel without giving you a cent. But what they admit next honestly shocks me that they said this in the document. On page 65 of the 2026 FDD, it contains this exact statement. It says, in some instances, current and former franchisees sign provisions restricting their ability to speak openly about their experience with our franchise system. You may wish to speak with current and former franchisees, but be aware that not all such franchisees will be able to communicate with you.
That's nuts. That is nuts. That is straight up saying, that may be the biggest thing right there, saying that people have had bad experiences. They may or may not be comfortable sharing their bad experiences with you, but those bad experiences, this right here is them saying, don't buy into this franchise. It doesn't get any clearer than that.
So Bricks and Minifigs is legally required to warn potential new franchisees that some former owners are gagged. And this, of course, alludes to the fact that they make departing franchise owners sign NDAs and non-disparagement agreements. And when you look at the three cases that we have of alleged franchise seizure with Crystal Law Gorman in Salem, the Plastic Pallet LLC in Clackamas County, and Gabe in Florida, all three followed that same documented playbook where they missed payments, they were verbally approved, but then they were secretly logged, and then there was possibly manufactured debt, legal threats, and there's an offer to forgive everything in exchange for handing over the store. So the question is, how many more stories are out there that are legally prevented from being told right now that say much of the same thing? And the fact that Bricks Minifigs had to add this disclosure means it's a known reoccurring pattern. It's not a one-off incident like Ammon McNeff loves to claim when he talks about this whole Brian Mansell collection business. No, this is a pattern. This is almost a strategy from what I can see. But
yeah, this is a business strategy. That's something we've stated before. And I wonder if like a Reckless Ben investigation is due here, looking at all of the Bricks and Minifigs shops across the country that have turned over from one over to the next, going and interviewing the owners that were previously part of the Bricks and Minifigs franchise and seeing what they're willing to or allowed to actually say.
Next up, let's talk about more of the financials and where all of this money is going. As we've seen from Bricks Minifigs financials, their revenue growth has been explosive. In 2023, they made about $40 million of revenue. 2024, that went up to $65 million. And in 2025, it went up to almost $100 million. With 223 franchise locations open as of December 31st, 2025, and like we said earlier, 70 more signed agreements that are pending opening. With the average revenue per store being over $500,000, but Bricks and Minifigs corporate net income in the same year has been negative $66,000, and the year before that was negative $215,000, and every year since 2021 has been losses. But as it's been pointed out to me, that's likely just for taxing purposes to pay less in taxes annually, and that makes a lot of sense. But in order for them to do that, they put a lot of their revenue in compensation. 42 to 59% of all Bricks and Minifigs corporate revenue goes straight to corporate employee compensation. Not back into the business, not into franchise support, not into advertising. They are not reinvesting a ton of this into growing the business, into giving more value to franchisees. The pattern seems to be the value for franchisees keeps getting worse year by year, and the pockets of corporate employees keep getting more full year after year. Not to mention, the government keeps flagging their finances every year as alarming since 2024. So to close and summarize, we have 5 government-mandated risk warnings, and 2 of which are brand new in 2026. We have $13.2 million collected from franchise owners in a single year in 2025. There are investment costs that have tripled since 2023, a transfer fee that doubled, making it more expensive to leave, 70 people who paid for stores that don't exist yet, a trademark on the weaker supplemental register that Bricks and Minifigs is not obligated to defend for franchisees, former franchisees legally silenced from sharing their experience, and a company that can compete with its own franchisees online without paying them a cent.
This is actually, if someone saw all of this information, all of this data that was presented to them before going into a franchise, and still decided to open up a Bricks and Minifig shop, or at least to buy in and put that $40,000 up front, those 70 people, I really question the business sense there, because it's all written right in front of you. That's why I lean on the fact that they probably just had this passion, this love for Lego and opening up a Lego shop, and this was their avenue to do it that made them overlook it. And I actually feel bad for a lot of those people, because many people, I mean, we're talking about 3 specific cases here of shops being taken over, but many people are going to lose a ton of money. Many more already have that are gagged at this point in time. And the 70 people that put their 40,000 forward to equal the $2.8 million to open up shops in the future, are they really going to open those shops? Especially after everything going on now, is Bricks and Minifigs even going to survive? This is a crazy story. And I've been covering it right here on the channel over the past month or so. I have a full playlist dedicated to the entire story of Bricks and Minifigs that you guys should check out. I'll link it up above, and you could find it on the main page of my channel. I'll also be linking the original source of this video, as I always do for all of my content. And if you want to dive deeper into the Bricks and Minifigs saga, check out the playlist right here. See you guys over there.